Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. It is 7 o'clock. I don't know where the gavel went. I don't really need it. I'll just yell or hope I don't need it. It is the 5th of June of 2017, a regular session of the Stayton City Council. And would those of a like mind please join me in a flag salute? I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Let's see. Do we have any additions to the agenda tonight? Oh, roll call, staff introductions. Everyone is here. The police force is here in its younger, more viral-looking presence.
Thank you, Mayor.
Lieutenant B, nice to see you tonight.
Good to see you, Mayor.
And everyone else. Councilor Nagel is absent and excused?
Correct.
Okay. All right. And everyone else is here. Additions to the agenda would not be an agenda item. I'll do that later. Declarations of ex-party contact, conflicts of interest, bias. Nothing? No? Okay, presentation comments from the public. Mr. Kevin Mannix and a sidekick of his want to talk about railroad connections, and so we're going to give him a few minutes and whatever it takes.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, council members, city staff. It's a pleasure to be with you this evening. My name is Kevin Mannix. I live in Salem, and I have a law firm in Salem. That's my regular job. My associate, Connor Harrington, is here with me tonight. We both do actually practice business law in Salem, but we spend a good deal of our time also looking at some community issues, policy issues around the state. I'll tell you a little bit of a history about our group, the Oregon Shipping Group, and then I'll ask Mr. Harrington to come up here and talk to you more specifically about the Willamette Valley Railroad. A year and a half ago, a couple of my clients came to me about the shipping situation at the Port of Portland, container shipping. And the long and the short of it is, and I won't give the speech tonight, is there was a failure, in our opinion, on the part of the Port of Portland to maintain container shipping because of a variety of issues. We formed the Oregon Shipping Group to serve as an advocate for a development of a vision as to what we can best do in Oregon to improve our shipping capabilities, to import product, but especially to export product. And in that context, especially because of our agricultural economy, our farmers who need to be able to ship their product to the hinterlands of the United States and out to the rest of the world. As we evaluated shipping issues, we have taken a look at Columbia River issues, coastal issues, but we also looked at the interior of Oregon at our 24 short line railroads, seeing them as an asset which could be better utilized if we would help them connect up, if we would help them maintain their facilities. And we had seen that the state had recognized some of this through the Connect Oregon funding program. But that funding program has really been a response to requests from certain railroads for help with improving their lines. It hasn't been connected with a schematic for what we want to do with our railroads to help serve as an alternative to the roads, to help serve as a less expensive and environmentally sensitive, more environmentally sensitive way to move freight. Since freight on rail obviously uses less fuel and has less of an environmental impact in terms of carbon emissions. This was coupled with what is, I will say, a fortunate political circumstance in that Portland has begun to recognize that highway congestion is affecting them, and as they've recognized that, they are now politically looking at what else can be done around the state to encourage alternatives to the use of the roads while also expanding road capacity. And you've seen legislation being developed this session where the state's trying real hard to put together a transportation package. In the middle of all of this, though, we've been taking a specific look at certain parts of transportation. And as we've looked at those parts, we've found there are certain railroads that have shown gumption. We want to commend the Port of Coos Bay for having acquired the Coos Bay Rail Link, because the owner was not really doing much to develop it and in fact even maintain it. And they have now poured tremendous resources into improving that rail link so that we predict that in the next few years, Coos Bay will reestablish itself as a major port for the import and export of goods using the rail link, because they recognize that their highway link is very limited, and it's going to have to be rail that brings them back into that capacity. As we looked at that, we also looked at the Portland and Western Railroad, which runs all the way up to Tongue Point near Astoria, and we were evaluating that line for its connections into the Willamette Valley. There's connections here, though, that I'm talking about. Then we looked at the Albany and Eastern Railroad that runs from Sweet Home, and it runs to Albany. It runs all the way through with a connection in Lebanon. And that line, which was purchased by Rick Franklin, has been developed very nicely and fixed up. But then we looked to the north, to the Willamette Valley Railroad, and began to talk to folks about this line and its potential, running from Woodburn to the south, but frankly petering out in the Stayton area and not connecting up in the south anywhere that useful. And as we began looking at that line, we looked at the potential in the future to have a connection in the north with the Union Pacific, which they do have, but a connection in the south with the Albany and Eastern Railroad, which could then connect you over to Albany and Millersburg, creating more of a circuit for railroad capability. At this point, I will pause. I'm going to introduce Connor, but I want to mention one other thing. We have talked to Dave Root, Sr. and Jr., the owner of the Willamette Valley Railroad, and his son. I let them know that we are presenting to you tonight. We do not represent them. We're here on behalf of the Oregon Shipping Group, but we are working on ideas as to what we can do. If you're going to have a rail line running through this part of the valley, let's make sure the rail line is in the best possible shape. Let's make sure that we're making the best possible use of it. And the one request I'd make of everyone in the room is, if you're aware of business folks who could make use of such a rail line for moving goods, we would like to talk to them, because we're beginning in a conversation now about what kind of businesses could we help with this rail system. And I will mention that we've started to have some conversations with a few business people. And as we have that conversation, we're talking about the vision and the potential for a quality rail line that would serve this community and this part of the valley. Now I'm going to turn it over to Connor Harrington to give you a little bit more detail.
Thank you, Kevin. Mayor Porter, members of the council, city staff. I'm Connor Harrington, Kevin's associate attorney, deputy director of the Oregon Shipping Group. It was really our meetings with ODOT, agricultural producers, and then speaking with Mayor Porter that kind of brought the Willamette Valley Railway to our attention. And it's become rather clear through our conversations that it's a railroad that could be better utilized, possibly. Whether that's feasible or not has yet to be determined. We know Marion County is proposing to carry out an economic feasibility study as to the Willamette Valley Railway. We encourage that. We've drafted up a letter to submit to them with some action items we recommend, and I have a copy of that. I'd be happy to share with the administrator for the council and city to see, and anybody else in this room. The Willamette Valley Railway, one of the big things we want to do by presenting here is open it up to let people know we're out there looking at it, that we want to develop business for railroads, but we also want to understand the issues that these localities are facing. What are Stayton's concerns with the railroad? What are Silverton's concerns? What are Woodburn's concerns? Each area is going to have unique issues. There are options for the railroad. Whether it's feasible to put financial investment into it is another question, but we want to be here to encourage that and to encourage businesses to utilize it if they can. Take trucks off the road, put them on rail. It's safer. It can be more cost effective. It's better for the environment. And once you lose a railroad, you're not going to get it back. If we let it become abandoned, we're not going to get that capability back again 10 years down the road, 20 years down the road. It's too expensive to build new rail ties, new rail track. It's just not feasibly going to happen. And I'd welcome any questions.
Well, go ahead, please. Priscilla?
Yeah. So when you're looking at all of the different options for that, all of these rail lines, are you looking only for transporting goods and shipping, or has there been any talk of transporting people on those?
Our primary concern has been the movement of freight, but once you have that capability to move freight, you can move passengers, you can have excursion trains, and that's a great use of the rail line as well. Commuter traffic, I'm not sure would be a viable option for this area, but it's worth having the conversation.
Mr. Mayor?
Go ahead, please.
Yeah, no, the concept of reinvigorating rail traffic to this area would be great for freight, but also for passenger. I was one of those rare people who took the Lewis and Clark Explorer train from Astoria to Portland when it was running along Highway 30 about 10 years ago. And we brought out a couple cars from the East Coast that were self-propelled diesel pushers, basically commuter cars, but ran them. And, I think that as I travel to Milwaukee virtually every day for work, I don't really like going from I-5 to 205, and that not only the freight option, which pays the freight, obviously, pardon the pun, but the potential for the urban rail or even the electric rail concept from the old days, it's a great option. And like Oswego, I'm a fourth generation Oswegan, we looked at taking one of the West Side Express trains. Those are the self-propelled trains. There are two of them that they built that are sitting in a roundhouse, unused, and connecting to the Milwaukee Transit Center. Those are, there are all sorts of things like that. We've invested the money, and let's just go whole hog, because then we'll get more buy-in. There are a fair number of people who commute from Salem to Portland or Salem to Eugene each day, and if we can do it, it takes 4 hours in Amtrak. Even though Cascades is lovely, if we could do it in a timely manner, dump you off downtown, why not? Look what happened in Seattle with all the facilities in Seattle are down in the Bay Area or down in L.A.
Mr. Cronquist, if I may, to your point about traffic, if we can put more of the freight traffic and the passenger traffic on rail, we can reduce more congestion through that I-5, I-205 corridor. That's one of our goals with the Oregon Shipping Group, and the state's taking a very hard look at that as we speak.
Yeah, freight pays the bill, but if we can put some passenger, some sort of easy to implement, not billion-dollar a mile light rail options, but self-propelled cars like the East Coast, like Metroliner, that'd be awesome.
Yeah, one more thing that I need to say before we go. Only because I just remembered the conversation I had yesterday with Corinne, my office manager. I get shipments every day, but not necessarily freight shipments, but I probably get one or two that are like freight, like pallets that come to me, and they come out of Portland. And they actually come from China and out of and then to Portland to me. But if they don't have enough stuff to bring down here, we get put on the back burner. And so she was just yelling about the fact that something that has been in Portland for 4 days, 5 days, we're not going to see it for another 5 days because they're going to wait until they have a truck going somewhere near us to drop it. So,
If I may, I'll add a few wrap-up comments, Mr. Mayor,
Yes,
members of the council. When we look at rail, I want to mention something about light rail. I've been trying to preach in Portland. When they talk about light rail, they should take the word light away from it and talk about rail. And if they talk about rail in the Portland area, the difference between light rail and regular rail is simply that light rail can't carry the heavier freight cars. They're the same gauge. And if we're going to develop rail in the metro area, it ought to be rail, because at night you could be running some freight trains back and forth instead of using the highways. During the day, you could use it for commuter lines. There are a lot of creative approaches that can be taken to the use of rail. But first, you have to have the rail. You've got to have the rail bed improved. It has to be able to carry the weight. And there are different classes of rail beds, but I'll use the Albany and Eastern as an example. The Albany and Eastern Railroad has now been built up to first-class capability. in terms of the weight that it can carry and the quality of the rail. We've seen that. We know it can be done. And imagine if the Willamette Valley Railroad were at that capacity. Then you can also be having discussions about what I call the icing on the cake, which is rail service for passengers. And the rail service for passengers could be at odd times for fun and enjoyment, such as excursion trains and tourism, but it can also be at regular times for commuters. And the line does go up north of Woodburn. Now, over time, as we look at the other lines around the state, there's an incredible opportunity over the next few years to overcome some of the barriers and connect up these lines. We're just starting that conversation. We wanted to let you know about it, and we thank you for the opportunity to come tonight and share a few thoughts.
Mr. Mannix, that Albany and Eastern goes all the way up to Crabtree or beyond Crabtree, right?
How far is
It goes, because there's a loading area in Crabtree. It's a loaded question.
All right, then.
Yeah, it's proverbially within spitting distance of us.
I've only been as far as Woodburn with the
Yeah,
Willamette
but proverbially,
Valley
you
Railroad.
know, there's a large loading area for logs in Crabtree. It's within, if you will, spitting distance of us, so it's not that great a leap to get the lines here.
So we'll work on it. And we thank you for your time tonight, and I know you have other business to do. Thank you very much.
Mr. Mannix, I've got one last question. Looking at this local, the Willamette Valley, there's no active attempt by the owners to try to abandon it, are there?
No.
Okay.
And I've met personally with Mr. David Rube Sr. about that. He invested in this line, got it, and has been maintaining it. But let's just say that we think he's open to discussion about things that could be done to improve the line. And so we simply called him up and went and visited with him and started the conversation. And now we're going to follow up on that.
Okay, super. All right. Thanks very much.
Thank you
both
for
of
your courtesies.
Okay. Connor, I'll write your name down first the next time so I properly introduce you. Okay, are there any other comments or questions from the public right now? Anything? No?
I want to find out, is this a copy of the letter of the recommendations that you are giving to the
Yes.
Marion County? Can I get a copy
I'll
of
make
that?
sure you guys get a copy.
Thank you, guys.
Okay, here we go. Consent agenda, May 15th, 2017, City Council minutes.
Move we approve as written, sir?
Add a, well, let me here. Add a collective bargaining agreement with AFSCME Local 3222. Okay, what do you want to do with these?
I move we approve the minutes,
Okay,
and I move we approve the collective bargaining agreement as presented to us.
all right, two motions or one?
Two separate motions.
Two separate motions.
No, for
Got a
consent
motion,
agenda.
is there a second to approve the City Council minutes for May 15th?
As a consent, it should just be,
Okay.
Consent agenda is one item. It's one item.
Yeah.
That's, it should be, shouldn't it?
Yeah, okay, one item.
One item, okay. A motion and a second?
I'll second.
Motion and a second. There isn't any discussion on these, so all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Hearing no opposition, we'll declare the motion passed, and both those items on the consent agenda passed. Okay, public hearing. Certifying eligibility and electing to receive state revenue sharing funds. Melissa, let me see if I can find my, where it is. The state, anyway,
Under public hearing, Mr. Mayor.
well, it should be, yeah. Well, that's Mr. Parks.
Here you go.
Let's keep going here.
Thank you.
No, that's still Mr. Parks.
Thank you. Cheat off this.
I thought I had to read something first. I don't have to read anything? What'd you do with it? You know you have to walk me through these things. Bless your little heart.
He's going to do his staff report.
Oh, he's going to do that first. Okay. All right, let me get We'll declare this public hearing open. Oregon Revised Statutes number 221.770 requires 2 public hearings to be held to hear from citizens regarding the use of state revenue sharing funds distributed to the city of Stayton. The first hearing was held at the Budget Committee meeting on May 8th, 2017. The purpose of this hearing is to hear public testimony on the proposed use of the funds. We're going to have a staff report, then we'll open the hearing. Mr. Parks.
Good evening, Mayor, councilors, and city staff. Thank you for that overview, and just real briefly give you the fiscal impact, and it's in your staff report, but the budget includes $10,500 from cigarette taxes, $110,000 from liquor taxes, $70,000 from state revenue sharing, for a total of $190,500 in your general fund. Additionally, there's $490,000 in your budget from state gas tax. That is in your street fund. The money within the general fund is targeted for public safety and general purposes. The money going into the street fund is for street maintenance. Also need to disclose to you that the total amount, again, is $680,500. It represents 3% of your overall budget of $22.3 million. Be glad to address any questions before you have the public hearing.
Yeah, any quick question, Mr. Parks, quick question.
Go ahead.
Cigarette taxes, are they city defined or are they?
They're statutorily defined in terms of the allocation. Is that your question?
We can't impose an additional city tax on tobacco products?
I'm not sure the answer to that. You may be able to do that. I'm not sure if any city has done that within the state.
It's my understanding that we cannot, but we could definitely check on that. But my understanding is we cannot impose any additional taxes on cigarettes.
Okay. Other questions for Andy? Anything? Any concerns about this? Andy, thank you on that. Okay, let's see. Open public hearing. Public hearing is open, and we've got a staff report. Open public hearing. And does anyone have any comment on these proposed uses? We do provide those services more all the time. Keith, we have an official count on that gas tax. It did pass, didn't it?
Yeah, I mean, we will talk about that. We will bring that before the next council for official adoption. I did look at the Marion County Elections Office results, and they do have their final official results posted, and the gas tax has officially passed. I think we'll talk about the change in the budget that we're proposing in regards to that in an upcoming item, but not part of this.
You want to do that in another meeting?
No, we're going to officially adopt it at the next council meeting,
Okay.
the election results. But tonight we will talk about a change in the budget we're proposing
All right.
based off of confirmation that this is passed.
Sounds good. Okay. Anything?
I see that, because that's not.
Any questions
talking-
for council?
Mr.
This is
Mayor,
ours.
Yes, Brian?
curious to know where the marijuana revenue comes from or figures in here.
We haven't officially put in marijuana yet. We have some expectations from the state on what that will be. There's been some information passed out from the state about proposed distribution from the different levels of government entities and the first year distribution, which is going to be based strictly off of the number of residents are rebuilt inside the city. We've made some calculations on that. There's nothing formal. We would anticipate once we receive something formal, we'll be back to officially adopt that as a revenue source as well. But at this time, we really don't have specific information in order to assess what that's going to be or to make a recommendation.
Do we have an expected date of getting any money?
There's talk of potentially as early as August 1st, and there is information out on what the current proposal is, but as at this point, nothing's been adopted and nothing's been formalized to the cities. It's just all theoretical at this point of what the proposals would be. I made some rough calculations, back the napkin calculations, But at this time, because we still haven't received official word of how or even when they're going to distribute, and Andy, if you have anything to add to that, I'd be happy to let you do that.
Right, yeah, that's, Keith summarized it pretty well for you. As it relates to this particular action, in terms of the state revenue sharing, there's nothing, one, recognized, and two, there's no guidance from the state in terms of whether it needs to be part of a public hearing, at this point in time. So,
Okay.
at this point, it's just limited to the liquor,
Gotcha.
cigarette, state revenue sharing, and the local gas tax.
Would that fall under liquor?
Would not.
Would not?
It's
Okay.
actually a separate, statute that.
So that's going to go to the general fund as well?
It will, and,
Okay.
yeah, we've got it, all set up
Right.
to,
Okay.
receive it in the general fund. You do have a local marijuana tax that we projected in the budget at $18,500, but the state, due to all
Yep.
the uncertainty,
Right.
chose to be
Okay.
more conservative and hold off on that.
Okay, thanks, Andy.
So are we the collector of the local tax?
No, that'll be done at the state and then distributed.
That's what I thought.
Yep. Okay. Anything else? Any other comments or thoughts on this? Let's go ahead and close the public hearing and council deliberation. Well, and then a council decision on resolution number 956 and 957, certifying eligibility and electing to receive state revenue sharing funds.
So moved.
A motion, is there a second, please?
Second here.
Okay, Joe?
Is that a motion on
Motion and a
956?
second?
And
On-
956.
Question, thought, somebody?
I think we need to do two separate motions on,
I think you need to do 956 and 957. I move on 956.
Okay. All right, we need to do one for each. All right, a motion on
So moved.
resolution 956, is there a second?
Second.
Second, thank you. Eligibility and electing to receive state revenue sharing funds. Is there any discussion? Alyssa, you ready to poll the group?
Sure.
Okay. If
Count-
there's nothing else, so would you poll the council, please, on resolution number 956?
Sure. Counselor Cronquist?
Yes.
Counselor Usselman?
Yes.
Counselor Quigley?
Yes.
Counselor Glidewell?
Yes.
Motion passes 4-0.
Okay, thank you. Now to 957.
Moved. So moved.
And a motion, is there a second, please?
Second.
And a second, Joe, thank you. Certifying eligibility and electing to receive state revenue sharing funds, number 957. Is there any discussion? Again, Alyssa, would you poll the council?
Sure. Counselor Glidewell?
Yes.
Counselor Cronquist?
Yes.
Counselor Quigley?
Yes.
Counselor Usselman?
Yes.
Motion passes 4-0.
Okay, got it. Thank you. Both of those are passed. We're good. Okay, Andy, thanks for being here tonight. Next item is a City of Stayton 2017-18 fiscal year budget. And you're still on.
Thank you, Mayor. The Budget Committee approved your budget on May 8th, 2017, again, $22.3 million. Of that, they also included levying the city's full permanent tax rate of $3.32.8 per thousand of assessed value, and the voter-approved local option tax rate of 60 cents per thousand. And that was approved on May 17th, 2016. You need to go ahead and have a public hearing on this as well. Also, local budget law allows the governing body, you, to make changes to the approved budget during the adoption phase, which would be this evening, as long as the estimated appropriations in a fund are not changed by more than $5,000 or 10% of the appropriation, whichever is greater, and that's in any given fund. And Keith mentioned to you earlier the passage of the local gas tax, and that particular item is one that we're recommending to you and have included in the proposed budget or the adopted budget resolution as a change from the approved budget, and that's in item 2 of your staff memo. Another item, an error that we found as we went through and reconciled the transfers between the various funds, is that in total, they were fine. On the revenue side, we had actually over appropriated a few of those transfers, and you can see in item 1, there's ultimately $11,200 in terms of reductions in those transfers. That ultimately is going to save, in those particular funds, $11,200. The money's going back to contingency. On item 2, again, the estimated revenue from your gas tax is at $160,000. The most that we can change the street fund, which is where that money will be going, is a little over $149,000. So we have increased the appropriation in capital outlay by $149,000 to give you the authority to go ahead and do some more street work.
Andy, wasn't our gas tax approval based on, predicated on the fact that all the money would go to street repair?
It will go to street repair, yes.
Even though we're only spending, it's only $10,001, I know, but if somebody asks, the difference between $149,900 and $160.
Yeah, whatever doesn't get spent this year will be carried over and spent next year.
And just to say there's another thing, we did an estimate of 160,000, but this was to be a little more conservative as well on what we actually brought in so that we don't overspend, especially with the first year of doing it. So there was additional thought process, and like Andy said, if there's any, just to clarify, if there's any money left over, then it will roll into next year's contingency and it can be used next year as well.
As long as we're not disingenuous to the voters, that's
Right,
great.
yeah, we'll be, setting up some project tracking on that so you can track it over a period of time as well.
All right. Let's see, fiscal year budget. Okay, we've got a public hearing on this also. So we'll open the public hearing, and we've got the staff report. Is there anyone that wants to make
Mr.
any
Mayor?
comments on,
Mr. Mayor, could you read the statement again, please?
I'm sorry?
This is a statement?
Statement again.
Yeah, there's a second
I
statement.
like reading this. This is good.
There's a second one.
There's a second one after that.
After the staff report. Is there anyone that would like to provide testimony regarding the proposed
There's a
uses?
second one.
The other way. I know that. I'm just a little slow, If there's anyone that would like to provide testimony regarding the budget approved by the City of Stayton Budget Committee, please come to the microphone and state your name and address for the record. Anyone? No? Okay. There's no testimony. Let's close the public hearing and go to council deliberation.
Mayor, I
We'll need a decision on resolution number 958.
Mr. Mayor, I move we approve the budget as presented to us.
Okay. I've got a motion. Is there a second, please?
Is this the budget with the changes in it?
Changes as presented,
Yes.
with the changes, yes.
All sections?
Second, there we go. Good, thank you. We're going to vote on a resolution number 958 adopting the fiscal year 2017-18 city budget, making appropriations and levying property taxes for the fiscal year. Is there any other discussion? Alyssa, would you poll the council, please?
Sure. Counselor Esselman?
Yes.
Counselor Glidewell?
Yes.
Counselor Quigley?
Yes.
Counselor Cronquist?
Yes.
Motion passes 4-0.
Okay, thank you. And we're done. Andy, appreciate the effort and appreciate you being here tonight. And
There's one more, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, and thank you for letting me stand as much as I
oh,
am.
indeed, indeed, yeah. A back that hurts is not fun at all. We know that. Okay. Let's see, we're good with that. No unfinished business tonight. New business, resolution number 959, fiscal year 2016-17 budget appropriation transfers. Mr. Parks.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, 959 deals with budget adjustments for the current fiscal year, and as we went through the budget approval and adoption process you noticed that there were certain expenditures that were going to be over or estimated to be over the original appropriation. This resolution goes ahead and adjusts those expenditures. The authority for that consistent with the budget document. There's 6 different transactions. I won't go through those. They were included in the staff report. There is one change on item 6 that I want to request that be made, and that is 6C, the stormwater SDC. We're showing that as an increase of $15,000. Actually, we are limited on that fund to roughly $3,000, so we would ask instead of $15,000 that adjustment be $3,000. I've talked with Public Works Director Lance, and he thinks we can make that work with that adjustment. Other than that, it is as presented, and would be glad to address any questions you may have on those adjustments.
Lance is counting on a dry winter.
Okay.
I'll have a month.
Is there any discussion or thought on this, on any of this?
I move we approve.
Okay. A motion to approve Resolution 959, fiscal year 2016-17 budget appropriation transfers.
That's with the change from 15 to 3?
I move we approve as presented to us.
Yeah. Okay. Is there a second on that motion?
I'll second.
Okay, thank you, Brian. Keith, under the facts and findings on that, do I get to guess why that extended land use case, why it's costing way more than we thought?
That's the ongoing litigation with the Phillips Estates.
Okay.
We're still waiting for a resolution on it.
Yeah, that's what I thought. Yeah. Okay. Is there any other discussion or questions? Let's go to a vote on this one then. All in favor of resolution number 959, fiscal year 2016-17 budget appropriation transfers? Alyssa, poll the council, please.
Counselor Quigley?
Yes.
Counselor Glidewell? Counselor Esselman?
Yes.
Counselor Cronquist?
Yes.
Motion passes 4-0.
Okay, thank you. We don't have any staff commission reports tonight. Comments from the public? Anything? Yes, ma'am, please.
Judy Boney, 2110 East Pine Street. I keep getting it mixed up with my address in Michigan. I just want to thank you for reading the statements so that we in the audience can understand what's going on if we don't get online. I appreciate also having the agenda and the minutes online for us to be able to access and read. And I just want to say the Tour of Possibilities that was Saturday was very eventful, and we're really glad that everything went well. And it was, as a citizen and a member of FOTS, it was really good to be able to get into some of the vacant buildings and talk to the people involved. And Dan did a great job with that and very knowledgeable. And I also I believe in thanking people for when they do things, so I want to thank Keith and Dan and Lance for always talking to me on the phone or meeting with me on the spur of the moment, and always helping me as a citizen in getting my questions answered. So you all do a very good job, and we appreciate you.
Thank you.
Dan, how many people were on the tour? And there were realtors and developers, and it was a great tour.
There was a crowd of about 20 people on the tour, several of whom were actually people who were interested in trying to find a place for their business or their business activity.
Okay.
It was well done.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes, Brian.
I want to thank Judy for being on the Charter Review Committee. She did gave a lot of her time and effort into putting that together and attending those regularly, so I appreciate that. And in speaking to you, you gave me some insight that I wasn't aware of in terms of making sure that the audience understands the topics we're discussing up here, as you referenced tonight. So I appreciate that, and I think that's something that's important for us, is to make sure that the folks in the audience are understanding the agenda item that we're discussing. And so if there's any way we can elaborate on that a little bit more and make it a little bit more clear as we discuss it, I think we should continue to do that.
Okay. Do you think the staff reports, do they do an adequate job of laying out the basics of what the discussion item is?
Yeah, I believe so. I think more to the point was some of the stuff is, some of it's kind of gets lost in translation, if you will. And any time we can make it more decipherable for folks that are out there that don't deal with this on a daily basis is what we need to do. If that makes any sense. Some of it's esoteric in nature, and
Yeah.
we talk about it as we routinely because we're already familiar with it, but it doesn't mean that the folks in the audience are familiar with it.
Yeah, I would love if our staff reports included an actual, just brief summary of what they were instead of the continued, you have my report in front of you and everything's fine.
I concur with Priscilla. I like it when Lance at the Parks meeting gives a little Parks report, or, where it's just a couple pages of, Bob clipped these trees, and we had vandalism and kicked out these people. It's nice to hear.
Yeah.
And I'm sure library does that as well. And I know police does.
I personally like to entertain, but that doesn't always received well, so got to stay with business. All right. Thank you, Judy. I appreciate you being here. Richard, business from the city administrator.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. As I mentioned earlier, I did notice on the Marion County website that the Marion County Election Office has completed their canvass, which makes their results official, and so we were able to confirm that the gas tax, as of May 31st, had officially passed. So we dealt with that tonight. I want to thank the citizens and look forward to having the additional monies to do additional work. I know Lance is already starting to work on where to go and where to spend that. So it's looking forward to showing results on that so people can see their tax dollars at work. Also, I don't know how you guys like to spend your birthday, but Alyssa likes to spend it here. So I wanted to acknowledge her birthday and thank her for being here. And I from a previous employment, had been told I should never sing, so I will not do that. But if you guys want to wish her a happy birthday, I think that would be most appropriate.
Good
So,
move.
with that, that's all I
Happy
have.
birthday to you. Happy birthday to you.
Come on, Dan. Happy birthday, dear Alyssa. Happy birthday to you.
And many more.
So I'm not going to embarrass her.
Anything else, Keith?
That's all, Mr. Mayor.
All right, thank you. Business from me. Just a brief, and I will be brief, comment on Silverton. Well, I guess they buried him here, laid to rest one time a really prominent member of this community, Bruce Philippi. And if you lived in Stayton in the probably 50s, 60s, 70s, this guy was one of the real movers and shakers in this community, in a sort of spectacular way lots of times. I was working at Earl's Chevron in the summer when his dad drove a car through that plate glass window across the street at what was then the old John Lucas, Gene Teague, John Lucas Chevrolet, before they moved out on 22 where the DMV office is. So that was kind of spectacular. And the employees ran over across the street and got Roy out of the car and hustled him off to the house before the police got there. Too much happy hour. But that was then. The only other thing I thought was spectacular about Bruce, and being kind of a car nut, was when he found a broken Rolls Royce somewhere and brought it home, and they had to put an engine in it. That's the only one in town, the only one a lot of people had ever seen. And they got it fixed up and they ran it around for a summer. And it was just so out of the ordinary. I mean, even if he was a car dealer, he was selling Fords. You know? Here's this beautiful silver gray gold Rolls Royce. Anyway, that was then. Business from the council. Thank you, folks. Anything? Future agenda items, revised fee schedule, City of Stayton Charter, CCRLS agreement, that's with the library, right? Hayden Homes appeal hearing. That it? We done? Let's go home.